Good evening and welcome to the live stream, everyone. Hope you're very well tonight. We have Ava on. Great to see you, Ava. We have Raven 1983 Witch. Great to see you too. Colin Thompson is here. Thanks so much for coming on. We have King Muffin. Love the name as always. We have Dr. Johan Munch. Thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. A gift of a bone. Thanks so much for that. Very kind. Hope you're well and not working too hard. We have Joe Cake. Great to see you, Joe Cake. John O'Sullivan is here. Boomer Age is here too. Hope you're well. Arc Office. Great to see you. Stu is here. Hope you're well, Stu. David McGuinness. Great to see you. Evening all. I'll be listening in from work this evening. Oh, I'm sorry that you're at work. The bills have to be paid. Great to have you on, David. I hope you're well. We have... and check out Indie Truck Davies channel and the Two Davies channel as well. We have Cole, great to see you. Colin is here. Van Nackenizer, great to see you. Young Ralph is here too. Killer, hope you're well. Thanks for moderating. We have Roshin is here too as well. Great to see you. Artibus, Inconsequential, great to see you. Who else have we got? Daniel. Did I say hello to Roshin? Yeah, I did already. We also have Duke. Yoni, great to see you. Alistair, good to have you on. Hope you're well. We also have Amaxc, great to see you. Curry for breakfast. Don't tempt me, Frodo. We have Daily Blaze, great to see you. Hope you're well. And thanks for the mention of the live stream, Daily Blaze. Hope you're well tonight. Love your videos. We also have Eddie, great to see you. Who else have we got? Mark, great to see you. CGM is here. Jared Mack C is here too. Mad Monkey and so many more. Hope you're all very well. Hope you had a nice week and you're ready for the weekend. So of course today is the first anniversary, and hopefully there won't be another anniversary after this, of the war in Ukraine. The special operation, Putin's special operation, which was due to last, was expected to last 3 days. Yeah, we're still at it. Or we should say they're still at it. And how many... probably everyone has some particular memory of it. But for me, I think it was the first or second day of the invasion. There was a scene that really struck me. It was... one of these Russian tanks, it's not a tank, it's one of these armored personnel carriers, just drove down the street. There was a car heading towards it, a civilian, obviously, and the tank just swerved and drove over the civilian vehicle. Luckily, the driver was rescued. He was okay. Oh, no sound? No, there is sound. But there was sorry, just looking at the chat. Was it so the driver was rescued. Sound is fine, Boomer. Okay. The driver was rescued from the wreckage. It was okay. But it struck me, and it was a shocking image, and it was a bit of a taste of what was to come. And the Russian army were all the way to Kiev, and they were eventually pushed back, and now there's a risk, and the Ukrainian army have said that they're planning to take back Crimea in the summer. That'd be battle. That would be a serious battle, I imagine. So I just want to cover some of the stories related to Ukraine before we move on to Brexit. World Bank announces $2.5 billion in additional grant financing for Ukraine. The World Bank has announced in additional grant financing for Ukraine to support the country's budget and to maintain essential services. The funds will go towards supporting Ukraine's key sectors, including healthcare, schools, payment for pensions, payment for internally displaced people, social assistance programs, and wages for employees providing core government services, a statement from the World Bank has said. The president of the World Bank Group said, 1 year into Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the world continues to witness the horrific destruction inflicted on the country and its people. We will continue supporting the people of Ukraine through urgent repair projects and coordination with the government for recovery and reconstruction efforts. And it's also important that, Ukraine gets support, but other countries around the world get the support they need from the World Bank too. I've seen images of how this money has been spent. It's rebuilding people's homes, and it seems to be going in the right direction. This was an interesting story here. If the EU fails to agree on new round of Russian sanctions. The EU's top diplomats have, for the third day running, failed to agree on the bloc's 10th round of sanctions against Russia. According to sources, talks are understood to be struck on the question of rubber trade with Russia, with Poland reportedly rejecting Italy's demand for laxer new curbs on rubber imports. Reuters reports that Poland has proposed restrictions on EU imports of Russian rubber, including such a big quota of imports exempted and such long transition periods that they would have no effect in practice. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen had told Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky that the EU aimed to have the measures in place by today, the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So, unfortunately, there seem to be business interests in some countries in Europe that want to block these sanctions. This round of sanctions is more focused on businesses on imports, I should say, than individuals. The first round, I think, were mainly on individuals linked to the regime. It's important that solidarity doesn't collapse here, that unity doesn't collapse at this time. And finally, one other report here on Ukraine. It says here, Russia may send fighter jets to Iran, says the White House. The White House said it believes Russia may provide Iran with fighter jets and other military equipment in exchange for support for its war in Ukraine. Speaking to reporters, the White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby said the US had information that Iran had shipped artillery and tank rounds to Russia in November. In return, Russia was offering unprecedented defense cooperation, including on missiles, electronics, and fighter jets, he said. He said Iran was also seeking to purchase attack helicopters, radars, and combat trainer aircraft, which make much sense because Russia hasn't been really using its air force because it's too dangerous. So it would make sense to exchange aircraft for artillery and tank rounds, things that they plan to use a lot of. So here's a report on what's the current situation.
Well, as promised, we can get more now on the war in Ukraine. In February 2022, Moscow had planned to take control of Ukraine in a matter of days. But the Ukrainian resistance slowed Russia's progress, and days, as we know, turned into months. Well, we can get analysis now on how the first weeks of the war unfolded from Professor Michael Clark.
Thanks, Sam. This is the actual anniversary of the beginning of the war, the day the invasion took place. So this is the 366th day of what was intended to be a three-day war. And we know that it was intended to be a three-day war now, we're sure, because the Russians intended to grab Kiev in the first 3 days and within a couple of weeks to have pacified and settled the other cities that they intended to take. And so it was a four-front war to begin with, a push towards Kiev from Belarus and from the northwestern districts of the Russian border, a push towards the cities in the northeast, a push in the Donbass, and the easiest push of all, northwards from Crimea, where the logistics were easier, the distances weren't so great, to actually move up to grab this land bridge between the Donbass and Kherson, and then push towards Odessa and take the port, the third city of Ukraine itself. And in those early days, our attention, of course, was all on Kiev. What was happening there? Two things were really important. Hostomel Airport, the airfield. The VDV, the Russian airborne troops, took Hostomel, and that was important. They wanted to use that as their jumping-off place to grab the government in Kiev, and then they could use that to bring in thousands of troops to take the rest of the city. They took it, but they lost it again. The Ukrainians got it back, and that's the important thing. So the Russians lost their foothold in Hostomel Airport. And then the second thing, we were all watching this great convoy that developed coming out of Belarus down to the west of Kiev. And we were waiting for this convoy to surround Kiev, along with the forces coming in further from the northeast. In fact, we now know it wasn't a convoy. It was a traffic jam. There were 10 battalion tactical groups who couldn't make headway over the rough ground, over the boggy ground, so they headed for the road. And because their maps weren't very good and their coordination was terrible, they all headed for the same road. So in the end, there were 10,000 troops, 1,000 main battle tanks, 2,400 armoured vehicles, all stuck on the same road. It was a 35-mile, month-long traffic jam. That's what it was. Eventually, it all released itself, it sort of unravelled itself, and the battle for Kiev was over. And so we ended up a month after the beginning of the war, and it had looked like this. Kiev was saved because of the incompetence of the Russian advance, but they were digging in, as it were. They were making progress in the other cities, in the north, in the Donbass, and across the land bridge. The Ukrainians were fighting back in dynamic defence. They weren't able to do very much, but they were dynamically defending wherever they could. You can't defend a single line when you're outnumbered. You just sort of hit where you can. That's what they did. Effectively, at this stage, after a month, they were doing very well, but we all knew they were losing slowly. Think about the war on the 24th of March, after about a month. It was clear that the Russians were in several areas, around Kiev, in the northeast, in the Donbass, and in this land bridge to the south. There were 4 big fronts. And although we could see that the Russians were making hard work of it, we thought that they will learn, they'll get better at it. They made no more hard work of it than in the great convoy that was approaching Kiev from the west. We now know it wasn't a convoy, it was a monumental traffic jam. 10 different battalion tactical groups all sought the same road to get away from the soft ground without proper planning, proper communication. And in the end, 1,000 tanks, 2,400 armoured vehicles, 10,000 troops were involved in a 35-mile traffic jam that spent a month before it could unwind itself. That was monumental. But that's where the war seemed to be after a month. We thought they'll get it right. They'll move in on these areas and try probably to move into the area east of the Dnieper River and take the whole of this eastern part of the country. But that's where we are today. Just look at the difference. The red areas indicate where the Russians occupy. The yellow areas are the 2 fairly big areas that the Ukrainians have liberated. So Kharkiv Oblast, Kharkiv region, they've got right through to the border of Luhansk. And in the west, they've taken back a lot of the Kherson Oblast right through to taking the city of Kherson itself, making the Russians abandon the city. And so here are the Russians occupying the Donbass, which they now say is their prime target, and holding on to this land bridge, very important to them, to maintain control of Crimea. But both sides are now preparing their offensives. As the winter plays itself out, we are expecting a lot more manoeuvre on this map, and we'll see in the months to come, as the winter fades away, who has the momentum in the next phase of this war, which certainly will run through for, I guess, the better part of this year at least.
So it's going to go on for a bit longer. Okay, let's move on, guys, on to Brexit. Boris Johnson hints he may not support Rishi Sunak's Northern Ireland deal. Wonderful. So Boris Johnson has hinted he may not support a proposed deal over the Northern Ireland Protocol from Rishi Sunak, heaping pressure on the Prime Minister to revive a controversial bill that would unilaterally override parts of the Brexit Treaty. His intervention came on Thursday as it emerged that lawyers advising Eurosceptics in the Conservative Party submitted fresh proposals to Sunak to end the rule of EU law in Northern Ireland, one of the major sticking points in the UK-EU negotiations over the protocol. Now, what are they talking about? Talking about the ECJ having final arbitration powers here on EU law applying in Northern Ireland. I don't see how the EU is going to compromise on that. It doesn't make any sense if they do. So, and who's requesting that the ECJ don't have any ruling over EU law in Northern Ireland? Well, the DUP in particular in Northern Ireland and the ERG in England. Are they going to get their way? Well, the problem is they don't have a solution. They don't have an alternative. It's one thing to say we want to replace the protocol, want to get rid of the protocol, Another thing is we get rid of the protocol and replace it with something else. And they haven't presented. And this is a big problem I find with the media. So the media never challenge Jacob Rees-Mogg or Jeffrey Donaldson or whoever. Never ask them, okay, what is your alternative? Because they keep saying the protocol needs to go or the protocol needs to be fixed, or they neither present a problem that we can actually analyze, and they don't actually present any solutions. And while if you compare that with the European Union, what has the European Commission done? Well, they've met with stakeholders in Northern Ireland, businesses, community leaders, politicians as well, any politician who's willing to meet with them, and asked them, okay, what problems are you facing? Businesses talked about, the paperwork, the checks, things like this. And the EU said, okay, we'll go away, we'll come back with a proposal, let us know what you think. And I think it was back in 2021, the EU came back with the proposal, and businesses in Northern Ireland said, well, this is great, wonderful, we're happy with this. Well, we got more than we expected. Maybe it was 2022. But the European Commission went away, had to think about what they can do, how they can change parts of not change the protocol, but add things within the framework of the protocol to ease some of the problems. And they came back. So how it was resolved was businesses came up with real problems, not invented problems, and the European Commission, I should say, came back with a solution, and the business community were happy. While the DUP and the ERG will come up with problems, they'll say that there are problems. They won't explain what those problems are. There'll be abstract things like sovereignty and Britain's place in the Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom, and trade in general. They'll come up with these types of problems, but they won't actually propose any solutions. And I really wish journalists, the media, would ask people like Jeffrey Donaldson, okay, you don't like the protocol, tell us your alternative. Now they may say something like, oh, the command paper, but that was dismissed by the European Union. Like that was the British government's command paper, which was presented once, and we haven't heard about it since. I don't think the British government took it seriously either. Anyway, now we're back to Boris Johnson trying to make a mess of the situation in order to boost his own image. It says here, his intervention on Thursday came on Thursday as it emerged that lawyers... Sorry, yes, I've read that part. The proposals were sent to Downing Street, senior ministers and the government and the European Commission, as the Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris travelled to Brussels for more talks with the Commission Vice President Maroš Šefčovič. In an interview with Sky News, Johnson said it was important that we wait to see what there will be in Sunak's deal. But the former Prime Minister went on to say, I think the best way forward, as I said when I was running the government, is the Northern Ireland Protocol, is the Northern Ireland Bill, or the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, which cleared the Commons very comfortably. Yeah, of course, because you have an 80-seat majority. I think unamended, and I was when I was in office only a few months ago. So I think it's the best way forward. The problem with the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill is that it would break international law, and this is the problem. The UK government signed up to an agreement in 2020, the withdrawal agreement, and they said, yeah, it's wonderful, it's an oven-ready deal, perfectly fine. Now they want to break it. They're willing to break the international agreement, and they want the EU to sign up to a new agreement. And and what's to stop them from breaking that as well? This is the problem, and this is something that needs to be another thing that needs to be brought out under the light of day. This needs to be raised by journalists and the media as well. If the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill breaks international law, and it's been admitted by Brexiteers that it will, it gives ministers the ability to break parts of the withdrawal agreement. They'll give their reasons why, but they'll still admit that it does break international law because it's necessary. We have to break international law. what's the point in having another agreement with the EU then? Doesn't make any sense. Like, why would the EU agree with anything with you if you're going to break it? I don't think they're going to break the withdrawal agreement. The consequences would be just too dire. Break the Tories, not international law. Yes. It goes on to say here, the bill which would allow the UK to unilaterally rip up the Brexit agreements in arrangements for Northern Ireland has been paused amid the UK-EU negotiations discussions. It's been used as a bargaining chip. It's a bit like the No Deal Brexit. Remember the No Deal Brexit? One of the criticisms that Lord Frost had of the Benn Act was that it took away the bargaining chip of the No Deal Brexit. That, look, we use a No Deal Brexit as a negotiating chip, and but it was not a negotiating chip because it was not something you could use in the negotiation. It wasn't leverage because there was no sense in actually doing that. Sorry, I have some notifications popping up. Let me close them down. It didn't make any sense to say, yeah, we're going to walk away without a deal. Now, what could happen here is that if the UK were to break the withdrawal agreement, there would be sanctions. And the way there are problems with tomatoes, well, there'd be problems with everything. And it'd be extremely embarrassing for the UK government. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Tories have broken everything in the last 13 years, Max. Yes. They have a habit of breaking things. I said before how the Brexiteers are about breaking things, not fixing things, not resolving problems, just about creating problems. Goes on to say the bill, Johnson said it was a very good bill. It fixes all the problems. No, it doesn't fix any problems. It solves the problems we've had with the Irish Sea. No, it doesn't. Solves the problems of paperwork. No, it doesn't. VAT and so on. It's an excellent bill. Sounds like Trump, and doesn't set up any other problems in the economy of the whole of Ireland. So I'd go with that one. I'd go with that one. The bill would allow the UK government to ignore parts of the protocol disliked by traders with Northern Ireland, but critics have said that it would breach international law and that if the UK government ever tried to use it, the EU would retaliate by imposing tariffs on imports from Britain. And I've said before, it wouldn't be just tariffs. The European Commission could change a rule and say, look, you need an extra toilet at the port of Dover. Sorry, at the port of Calais. The French government, you need to put in an extra toilet. Oh, okay, well, that's going to take about 2 months. All right, well, whatever it takes. Block the port, for 2 months. They could do something like that. Sorry, somebody's spamming. I saw something about spamming. The government would pass special legislation created a new export certification. The proposal to Sunak from Eurosceptic legal advisors suggests a system that would mean any business exporting to the EU that breaches European regulations will be prosecuted in British courts rather than the European Court of Justice. Okay, so let's see. This is the proposal by the ERG. So any business that was exporting to the EU that breached European regulations will be prosecuted by British courts rather than Europe. So who's going to carry out these checks? What, the customs staff in Britain, where there's a lack of, and they're not carrying out checks at the moment? Okay. To work, the government would pass special legislation creating a new export certification and tariff collecting system for exporters to the EU. By signing up to the certification, exporters in Northern Ireland would agree to pay tariffs if applicable and follow all EU relevant laws relevant to their products. So you'd have more bureaucracy. Okay. So you're creating new bureaucracy to get over what sort of problem? A problem for the DUP. The DUP party told the BBC on Wednesday night Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, the DUP leader, did not approve this document but was advised it was being sent. I don't think it would work. It is understood the document seen by The Guardian was written by some senior figures in Lawyers for Britain, a group of lawyers and academics who backed the Leave campaign. You can imagine what sort of calibre they're of, and are part of the ERG of Eurosceptic Tory MPs, Star Chamber of Legal Advisors, Star Chamber, along with Jamie Bryson, that guy, the Northern Ireland Policy Director for at the Centre for Union think tank. Jamie Bryson is, I better not say, I don't describe him. Christopher Hallworth. I do some research on Jamie Bryson, you'll find out exactly what he's like. An advisor to the ERG told the BBC Northern Ireland's Nolan programme, when we saw the proposal we thought it would be incredibly interesting because it raises a way of solving the problem of the Northern Ireland Protocol in a way we think could solve the needs of all the major parties to it. The EU and Ireland's needs, the needs to remove EU law and create democratic consent in Northern Ireland. What do you mean democratic consent in Northern? The people of Northern Ireland were not consulted. The Assembly was not consulted on Brexit, and do it in a way that leaves the invisible border and non-compliant goods don't get into the EU market. No, it's nothing to stop them from coming into the EU market. That's the thing. But the DUP and the ERG stressed that they are not authors of the document, but Howard told Nolan live that he had discussed it with Donaldson. I discussed it with him, and I think he would share the view that it's a very interesting proposal that deserves to be discussed because it is of a potential solution. Under the proposals, British prosecutors would take the companies in Great Britain to court if they were sending components to Northern Ireland that failed to comply with EU laws, but ended up finishing products from the region to the single market. But ended up in finished products exported from the region to the single market. Brad, thanks so much for that super chat. I prefer to call the ERG the ERG. Erg. I think I pronounced that right. Erg. Yes. I can think of worse names for the ERG, but I better not. It's a bit early yet. It goes on to say EU law would not itself directly apply within the territory of Northern Ireland, and it would only arise at or beyond the entry to the Republic of Ireland, at which point EU law would be enforced by the EU and Irish government, says the letter. The document suggests the EU and Ireland would apply a similar system in reverse with their own export certificate to comply with some more bureaucracy, okay? Under the system, companies in Great Britain selling products including components to Northern Ireland would end up another notification would end up being exported to the EU. Sorry, let me read this again. Under the system, companies in Great Britain sending products including components to Northern Ireland that would end up being exported to the EU would have to go through a red lane checks in transit, on the ferry, or on the arrival at the port in Belfast or Larne. Okay, so you're going to add more paperwork to be completed, and you want so once again this is going to rely on customs officials in Britain checking if goods have been sent. And what if they don't check? What's the incentive for the UK government to actually carry out these checks? Because if the goods are sold, like in the same way, if goods are, at the moment, goods are travelling from the EU into the UK, and the UK is not carrying out checks, and there's nothing to stop, and we've seen reports of something like 21 trucks checked, 20 of them had contraband in them, like rotten meat infected with maggots in it, meat that was mixed, cooked meat and raw meat mixed together, destined for the UK, for the British market. And it was caught, but because a spot check was carried out. that one day they decided, let's check all the trucks. And they found an absolute disaster. And then the day after, back to normal, no checks. So that this is a massive problem. So you would be what the UK got, the Brexiteers, the ERG, want the EU to trust the UK to carry out checks that is not carrying out at the moment. But in the case of carrying out checks for goods coming into the UK, which is important, it's not doing. It should be concerned about that. It's not doing it, and the UK government wants the EU to believe that the UK will carry out checks on goods that are for export. I don't see that being acceptable. What would it's like, I'm trying to think of an analogy, but I can't think of a good one. But it's food poisoning, a Brexit benefit. Alistair, thank you so much for offering those, offering the abbonamento in Italian. That's what because it appears in Italian. Those subscriptions, thank you so much for offering those memberships. Thank you so much for that. Very kind of you. Thanks for the support, and welcome the new people. Hope to see you on Discord. So there you have it. It's Boris Johnson wants to go ahead with the Northern Ireland Protocol bill, and the ERG want the EU to trust them. Moving on. Environment Secretary urges Britons to cherish turnips amid fruit shortage. You've probably already heard this, and you're probably up to your eyes in turnips at the moment. The Environment Secretary, Therese Coffey, has caused a furrier over after she suggested people should cherish seasonal foods such as turnips as bad weather cleared supermarket shelves of tomatoes and other fresh produce. It's important to make sure that we cherish the specialisms that we have in this country, Coffey told Parliament. A lot of people would be eating turnips right now rather than thinking necessarily as aspects of lettuce and tomato are and similar. Like, imagine back in 2016 somebody would say, imagine if somebody had said back in 2016, the Tories will be telling people to eat turnips because there's a shortage of tomatoes because of Brexit. People would say, don't be stupid, that's Project Fear. And this is exactly what's happening. Now, is it directly because of Brexit? No, it's a consequence of Brexit. It's more difficult to get for the UK to get access. I keep saying UK, it's Great Britain, because Northern Ireland doesn't have a shortage of tomatoes. High energy prices, it means that the producers of tomatoes in Britain are not producing tomatoes because they can't afford to switch on the heating systems. So to import them from abroad, it's difficult because there's a shortage, but the EU member states are distributing among themselves. So for example, the other day I took a picture of them at some tomatoes in my local supermarket that are from Spain. One of the places hit. And ironically, they were also on special offer. They were half price. It was about £1.75 a kilo. Somebody posted a picture of us of tomatoes on sale in a UK in a British supermarket for £6 a kilo or something like that, or £7. No, it was £9 a kilo. I think it was. Like, you'd be buying individual tomatoes at that stage. But this idea, just eat turnips. Do you think Therese Coffey has to resort to turnips? No, probably not. Fantastic time to do more work. Alistair, thanks for that. Yeah, it was a bacon, lettuce, and turnip sandwich. That's what people should be eating. And, replace pizza, the tomato on pizza, with turnip. It's probably really nice. I actually like turnip, okay? It's very nice, mashed with some butter and salt. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Ruth, thanks so much for that super chat. Didn't realize YouTube took a third of our donate. Yes, YouTube can be, that's a bit of a problem with YouTube, is with donations or with super chats, they They take a slice. That's unfortunately the way the cookie crumbles. But thanks for the support anyway, Ruth. Thank you so much for that. Well, there's nothing I can do about YouTube. Anyway, because with the love of turnips more commonly associated with the long-suffering manservant baldric blackadder, coffee handed our critics the kind of material that would normally they could normally only dream of. Let them eat turnips, suggested the Labour MP Ben Bradshaw, using the hashtag tomato shortages, as turnips started to trend on Twitter timelines for possibly the first time. As somebody posted on Twitter, to be fair, we did see it on the side of Boris's Brexit bus. Forget tomatoes, let's eat turnips instead. This is what you voted for, you dicks. Let's take back control. And then UK argues over whether Brexit is a factor in tomato shortage. Meanwhile, in Spain, yes. Anne Whittaker's post-Brexit cookery series, 101 Ways with Turnips. Oh, wonderful. So in other words, the turnip surprise will be a turnip. Oh, yeah. Brad, once again, thanks so much for that Super Chat coffee. Will next tell us to solve the water company's sewage dumping by cutting out the middleman and taking a shit directly in a river. Probably, yes. This is the thing about, Brexiteers and Tories. During the winter, what did you see on, when the winter was at its worst? We're still in winter, technically, I think. Or is it already spring? I don't remember. But if you remember, there was, during the cost of living where people were not heating their homes, the response was, well, you just get a hot water bottle, or put on another blanket, or wear a coat inside, or remember the times when people didn't have central heating. When I grew up, whatever. So, oh my goodness.
In an independent act of frontline journalism, your cameraman here, Matt Simons, and myself went to the Tesco's behind us, and yes, they have no tomatoes and they're blaming adverse weather. So what's it all about? Well, primarily just that, a run of unusually cold weather in southern Spain and North Africa, Tunisia right across to Egypt, where at this time of the year the UK can get up to 95% of its requirements of certain lines of vegetables. Tomato virus in North Africa adding into that. Second, the energy crisis. We do use growers in the Netherlands quite intensively this time of year. They've decided it's too expensive because of electricity prices. You don't just have to heat up the greenhouses, of course. You have light at these short hours of daylight as well. It's too much. They're not doing it. Then look at what the NFU was saying just in its conference the last few days, that the amount of vegetables that we're growing under glass is at its lowest level, certainly in some lines, Minette Batters, the NFU leader, said, since 1985 when records began. Yes, it'll get better. There's a thing called spring coming on. British growers will kick in. It is temporary, but maybe forego a few cucumbers, tomatoes and some lettuces and peppers for the time being.
And how has Brexit played into this?
Well, not greatly, but a little bit is the short answer. You've seen probably online pictures of people frolicking around wonderful vegetable aisles in supermarkets in places like Portugal. Looks like the Garden of Eden on a good day. And it's true, Portugal right through to France and Germany not suffering anything like the same sort of shortages that we're going through here. But that's because Brexit, obviously more red tape, more prices to get goods in, and we have to pay workers here more. But the Republic of Ireland is also suffering those shortages. It is a factor.
That's not what I've heard. I've heard that people in Northern Ireland, including people in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, are not affected.
Nobody's saying it's a big one.
Alex Thompson. Well, in a moment.
So, look, it's going to be something that's going to be resolved when spring kicks back in, and this is a temporary problem. But it does expose Brexit once again, that Brexit is something that will always come to it will float to the top because of a small bubble somewhere else. And all you need is a little push, and then Brexit will create more problems. Brexit is going to be creating problems until the UK rejoins the single market and the customs union through the EU. So we're going to see big impacts of Brexit, small impacts of Brexit, but we're going to see impacts of Brexit anyway. So guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so I just want to take a short comedy break, and we'll be back with some serious stuff, more serious stuff in just a moment, if you call turnips serious. Hope you enjoy this.
You have been selected for mobilization.
Yes, but I cannot go because I have a disability. Back is banjaxed.
We take them.
I'm 65 years of age. I know, right?
We take them.
You take... I am criminal. I am criminal. Despicable human being, so, you don't...
We take them.
I cannot go because I am Ukrainian, you see? So the conflict of interest there.
We take them.
My aim, though, is up, it's down, it's like, you should see my toilet bowl. It is disgrace.
We take them.
I'm insane. I'm insane.
It's okay, we take them.
I have lots of STIs.
We take them.
I am a coward.
A coward.
People call me coward.
We take them.
I'm American spy.
American
spy now.
No.
So I am the last person that you want to
No, we take them.
You take them. I have something in the oven. And I have something.
Okay.
I have a wash on.
Okay.
I'm allergic to bullets. I'm allergic to bullets. They flare up.
Okay.
I could die from a bullet.
Tell us on the way.
Bullets
Tell
can
us
kill
on
me.
the way. It's your things and come on.
No, please, just get my flag.
Okay. Come on.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Moving on. No, this wasn't what I was supposed to cover. Don't know why this popped up. I want to talk about the SNP, but they changed the link. Okay, let's move on to Labour. Labour Party planning second term in government. So before they've won a first one, they're planning a second one. That's always a good thing to do. Because it always works out like that. Keir Starmer has said that he's already planning a second term in government as he sets out his 5 national missions that will form the building blocks of Labour's next election manifesto. The Labour Party said that he had his sights on a decade of national renewal and was not going to shy away from saying that after 13 years of Conservative rule, it would take time to fix the fundamentals of the UK. In a major speech in Manchester on Thursday, Starmer promised a Labour government would deliver the highest sustained growth in the G7 group of wealthy nations by the end of his first term, or its first term. But there was little detail on how he would do that. The fastest growing nation in the G7. Where did we hear that before? Outside the EU, well, obviously, because the UK isn't going to rejoin the European Union in one parliament, so I don't know how he's going to get the fastest growing nation in the G7, unless he's starting from a very low rung, a very low point. I'm fighting for every single vote, and we've got a long way to go. But I'm also honest enough to say that some of those issues are not going to be fixed within 5 years, he told his audience of Labour MPs and members. Some of these issues are longer term. That's why I've said that we're going to have a decade of national renewal. I don't know. I do know we've got a long way to go. But at the same time, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that after the damage that's been done in the last 13 years, it's going to take time to fix the fundamentals. The Labour leader said his party's approach would ruffle the feathers across Whitehall and beyond, but is one that is necessary. He described his mission to boost growth as oxygen for our ambitions, to improve living standards across the UK, and told his audience, judge us on our plan. His economic pledge would mean the UK outstripping the US, Germany, France, Italy, Canada and Japan in terms of growth, something he conceded is going to be tough. I think it's going to be impossible unless you undo Brexit, but okay. Despite Brexit hitting economic growth by billions of pounds since 2016, Starmer urged people not to fixate laser-like on it as the only reason for the sluggish economy. No, it's not the only reason, but it's part of the problem. And you can't have the fastest growth in the G7 unless you undo part of Brexit, or do undo Brexit completely, I think. Because you created a situation, not you, but the Brexiteers have created a situation where it's difficult to export. And how do you grow the economy if you can't export? You can't export as you were before. How are you supposed to attract investment if businesses can't get access to the workers they need? So I don't know how you're going to grow the economy unless you get rid of Brexit. Because whatever you do, you're always going to have this drag on the economy. Like you could say, okay, we're going to cut corporation tax to zero. Okay, that will attract some investment. But if you're not able to sell those goods as easily as you could before into the single market, then you're not going to attract. You may attract some investment, but it's not going to result in massive manufacturing. What you need, that's what drives the economy, manufacturing. So, what are you going to? You're going to bring back freedom of movement? Freedom of movement for Europeans, but not for British people? That's not going to go down well with the racists and bigots. So I don't know how he's going to achieve the fastest growing nation in the G7. I think it's just a promise. The lack of growth in our economy can't simply be put down to Brexit. We've had a problem with growth in our economy since 2010. If we get fixated on Brexit as the only issue when it comes to growth, we would be making a big mistake, he told The Guardian after the speech. I'm not pretending we don't need to improve the deal we've got with the EU. I do think that the Brexit deal needs to be improved. It's obviously not working very well. It's not that the deal isn't working very well. It's Brexit is not working at all. It wasn't oven ready or even half baked. It's not just fixing the Northern Ireland Protocol. We have to have a closer trading relationship more generally. Closer. Max, it's not a promise, but a mission. Yes. We eventually want to get there. All around the world, countries are gearing up for an almighty race for the opportunities of tomorrow, he said. Britain must be at the starting line, not back in the changing room, tying its laces. Brexit would be not even being able to find your shoes. Never mind. It's a great analogy, though. He accused the government of being weak, divided and clapped out, repeatedly saying the UK needed more flexibility after years of Tory blowing in the wind. Rather than fixing deeply rooted problems, we lurch from crisis to crisis, always reacting, always behind the curve, a sticking plaster, never a cure. Starmer risked further riling the left of his party by stressing that he was ready to draw on investment and expertise from the public and private sectors to get the job done. This is, more privatisation of the NHS. However, he added, there's a massive hole in the private sector in mission-driven government, but if the aspiration is merely to replace the public sector with extracting a rent to privatise the profits while socialising the risk, that takes us nowhere. Well, that's good to hear. Starmer's missions cover 5 broad themes: the economy, the NHS, crime and climate change, the climate crisis, and education. He said they would be long-term objectives rather than consumer pledges, but would be measurable so voters can check against performance. Okay, how so? Okay, so for example, the NHS, what will the barometer be? How are you going to measure success? Is it about bringing down waiting times? Will it be the number of GPs that you're going to hire? What are the measurements? Because you could bring down waiting times by just moving more into the private sector. How are you going to increase GP numbers if you're not going to bring back freedom of movement? Because you're not going to be able to train up doctors, GPs in 5 years. So I don't know. Like, you need to get the investment. You need to provide the training. Like, I understand this is a 10-year plan, not a 5-year plan. But I really don't know how he's going to achieve this. Starmer goes on to say, ahead of the May elections, Labour will set out more detail. I think he could win the general election without any of this. He just needs to say, we're not the Tories. And that would be enough, at least for one victory, one session of Parliament. I know he wants to do two, but I think it would make more sense to set out your stall when you're in government, not beforehand. Because people are not thinking about 10 years, they're thinking about now. Ahead of the May local elections, Labour will set out more detail on how it would change the police and justice system to prevent crime, tackle violence against women, and stop criminals getting away without punishment. In echoes of New Labour, Starmer promised to be tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. We'll see how if that works again. It will then flesh out how the Labour government would make Britain a clean energy superpower. Once again, a superpower. How are you going to attract investment, and how are you going to attract the greatest minds? Because Brexiteers have put a block on both of those. Build an NHS fit for the future and break down the barriers to opportunity for all children by changing the education systems and making and better equipping them for the workplace. Get rid of the benefits for private schools. That would be a good way to, the tax benefits that they have, their charity status, take that away. That would be a good step forward when it comes to education, and take that money that you get from that invested in state schools. Even cup of soup is in danger. What's that? Oh yes, for tomatoes. Certainly not a tomato soup superpower. Oh my goodness. We have enough of turnips. Can you make chips with turnips? Instead of potatoes, you could... Never tried that. Turnips are very difficult to find here in Italy, actually. My wife loves turnips. So, sticking with Labour for a little bit, I wanted to talk about the SNP, but I had a link, but it doesn't seem to be working anymore.
Pitching a path to power. A general election sometime off, but the campaign now very much on.
I didn't realise we're going to have all the people up on the other floors.
This a leader on the up in polls, now laying down his plans for office.
Mission-driven government. An answer to the widespread call to fix the fundamentals. A long-term plan to unlock our pride and our purpose. A profound statement of intent.
5 missions to grow the economy and improve opportunities, become a clean energy powerhouse, improve the NHS and make our streets safe. But will it cut through?
People want their country to work, but can you honestly say that you're blue sky thinking rather than clear specific policies such as cutting working people's taxes or ensuring that they'll get a hospital appointment is in any way relatable?
You're quite right to say, look, what are you going to do about the NHS this winter? What are you going to do about energy bills this spring? But the problem if we stop there with that sort of retail offer for the here and now is that we'll never fix the fundamentals. We've had 13 years of sticking plaster politics. We've had 13 years of going round and round in circles.
People here have an appetite for change, but they're not yet sure what that looks like.
He's keeping everything vague enough that it, ticks all the boxes without actually cementing a position.
And I think this is what he's trying to do. Is like nothing too radical, a little bit bland, long term. Not once again. I think it's his entire approach to all of this about winning the election is don't rock the boat. Provide people with something, but nothing too radical that people start talking about it too much. You want to maybe talk a little bit, but I think very few people are actually talking about this. And that's probably a good thing for Labour, because they want to be seen going into the next election as, the alternative. People don't like the Tories, so they don't want to vote for the Tories, so they want to go somewhere else, and they want something a bit more positive. But don't be radical, because that might upset or worry some people. Britain has a bright future behind it. Yoni, thanks for that super chat. I think someone is going to have to come along and be honest with the public. And unfortunately, in the media and politics, nobody is being honest. Because if somebody was honest, then it would be a shock, a bit of shock therapy, and then people would be able to wake up. Okay, now how do we fix this? But nobody really wants to. For example, the issue of Brexit, nobody really wants to talk about it. The Labour Party don't really want to. You saw there from Keir Starmer in the article. Let's not blame everything on Brexit. Let's blame most of it on the Conservatives, because he wants to get in first. Maybe he'll start blaming things on Brexit after he's in power. He might be in a better position to do that. I'm hoping that's what he's going to do. I hope that the reason he's not talking so much about Brexit is because he wants to get into power first. I could be wrong. He could be trying to make Brexit work. It would make a lot of sense. And I think Phil, from a different bias, and I don't want to put words in his mouth here, but I think he's of the same mind, that Starmer wants to focus on getting in and then doing something about Brexit, because he can't do anything on the outside. And if he promises to undo Brexit, it would appear too radical, in a sense, and it would upset a lot of people that he needs to win over. So if he's bland, nothing too radical, it might be enough to, for people who are maybe sitting on the fence. How anyone could still be sitting on the fence, I don't know. But if there's anyone sitting on the fence who did vote Tory and they're like, I don't like the Tories too much now, should I just sit at home? No, come on out. Starmer has something for you. Is it radical? No, it's quite bland. Okay, then I think I'll turn up.
Do you sort of feel you know what he stands for?
Not particularly.
You think Starmer's better for the Labour Party?
There's more chance of getting elected than Corbyn, isn't there?
It doesn't matter.
That's the point. He has more chance of getting elected. Part of the argument is convincing people that you can win. It's a sort of chicken and egg situation. And, I know it's not a great analogy, but it's a bit of a chicken and egg. Like if people think you can win, they'll come out and vote for you, irrespective of your policies. If they see you as a winner, if they see you as somebody who will lead the country, then I think that's why a lot of people come out. People vote for many different reasons. Rowan, thanks so much for that super chat. Deliver greatest growth in turnip consumption in the G7. At least that is achievable. Yes, the greatest consumption of turnips, at least in 2023, maybe in 2024 too. Thanks for that super chat. Cole said, I think Phil said that it might be the second term a while back. Not sure if that's the case. Yeah, it could be in the second term when he starts talking about Brexit, but he'll need to start talking about it pretty soon, because if he wants to undo the damage, if he wants to build a better relationship with Europe, if he wants to convince people that our place is in Europe, then he needs to start talking about it when he's in power.
What you do then, or who you vote for, like nothing will change.
Yeah, 100%.
So you don't trust any politicians?
No, not at all.
And that lack of trust is hurting the Conservatives. Labour are now 25 plus points ahead in the polls, not necessarily because people like Labour, but rather they seem to dislike this Conservative government. And Sir Keir Starmer is now trying to begin to seal the deal with voters. These 5 missions will form the skeleton of the next Labour manifesto. But what it all boils down to is still so very vague. There's still no meat on the bones when it comes to either policy or priorities.
So we'll see how things manifest. As guys, we're almost at the end of the stream for tonight, but I just want to cover one more story here before we finish. Junior doctors in England to strike for 3 days from the 13th of March. British Medical Association announces industrial action dispute over pay and conditions. So back to our graph here, you can see in March, strike action almost every day, or at least half of the month anyway. Tens of thousands of junior doctors in England will strike for 3 days from the 13th of March in an increasingly bitter row over pay, morale and staff and safe staffing levels, the British Medical Association has announced. In only the second such action in the 74 year of the NHS, junior doctors will strike for 72 hours continuously after 98% of them who voted favoured strike action. The junior doctors, who are members of the Hospital Consultants and Specialists Association, will also strike for the first time in their union's history on the 15th of March, joining BMA members on the third day of their action. The NHS faces the grim prospect of having to cancel hundreds of thousands of operations and medical appointments, derailing recent progress made in tackling the enormous care backlog that has worsened considerably by the COVID-19 pandemic. The BMA was left with no other option but to proceed and announce the dates of the unprecedented action after Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, twice rejected offers from junior doctors to meet with them this week. And this is the problem. The junior doctors have said, we want to meet with the Health Secretary. The Health Secretary has said no on 2 occasions. And they say, okay, then we have to go on strike. So remember this when you hear, commentators like Nick Ferrari or others on Talk TV criticizing the junior doctors for going on strike. They tried to meet with the Health Secretary. The Health Secretary said no, not even going to meet with you. He met with them and then rejected calls when it came to calls about pay or anything. No, just rejected, refused to meet with them. Make no mistake, this strike was absolutely in the government's gift to avert. They know it. We know it, and our patients also need to know it, said Rob Lawrenson and Dr. Vivek Trivedi, co-chairs of the BMA Junior Doctors Committee, In a joint statement, we have written many times, and even as late as yesterday, we were hopeful Steve Barclay would recognise the need to meet with us to find a workable solution that would have averted this strike. Ministers have been given the freedom to talk to unions about pay settlements that could include backdated or one-off payments, as well as end the escalating series of public strike actions. But Downing Street says it is critical unions agree to call off planned industrial action before talks can begin. Like, how can they be expected to call off action before talks begin? They asked, can we meet with you? The minister refused. Now they're going on strike. What the government are saying, no, call off your strike and then we'll meet with you. Yeah, but if we call off our strike, then we'll have no bargaining chip. Keiichi Muller, great to see you once again. Hope you're well. Hey Max, please consider to show the video I sent you via Discord. I think it's important to understand the true conservative madness looks like. Let me see if I can find it, and then I will show it. Thank you so much for that super chat. I just closed Discord. Let me reopen Discord if I can find it. I closed Discord because it was making notifications. Let me find the... Thank you very much. I'll show this video now.
You know, in the case where child abuse is fatal, obviously it's not good for the child, but it's actually a benefit to society because there aren't needed for government services and whatnot over the whole course of that child's life.
What?
That was an Alaska state representative named David Eastman, a Republican, literally claiming that child abuse fatalities could actually have a silver lining, less of a cost on society.
My God. And you wonder where the Tories get their ideas from. When it came to, for example, voter ID, this is an idea copied from Republicans in the United States. Cole said he saw this. This is nuts. So if people don't get support, it's better for the state because it costs less. My God. Thanks for sending me that link. I'm dumbfounded.
I don't hear you rebutting his argument, Anna. Dude made a point. What's your counter? Does he think that devil's advocate is like an actual job that you can get and he's trying out? That was insane. Also, it's even if like he doesn't even understand what he's saying, he's wrong as well, but also morally abhorrent.
I think he understands what he's saying. He was asked by other lawmakers because the first time he said it, they're like, oh, I must have misheard.
But I would argue that he has this stat, which I think you're gonna get to, about the additional cost that child abuse that doesn't result in death can additionally cost to the family and to society, in that the child, needs treatment or whatever. Yeah, but it's also like, in theory, let's say you're gonna be horrific and say it's better if they die. No, there's still tons of costs on the family and on people who know them, and the lost productivity of the.
So I used to think that Republican politicians were like pretending to be evil because they knew the voters would like that. But you can't pretend this. This is just evil. And it's not even your money you're talking about. It's taxpayer money. But even if you were to go down that road of economic, or the economic argument, it's not your money. But it's, this is this sort of libertarian, small government, non-existent government. We don't want to provide any sort of social safety net. We don't want to provide any sort of assistance. And these people claim to be Christians as well. My God. Thanks for that. And wow. I just want to respond to Ruth's statement as well. Thanks so much, Ruth. Is England an independent country? The government has complete control over their laws and finance, etc. The devolved governments don't. Yes, it's an interesting question because England is not, in a sense, it's not an independent country because it's part of the United Kingdom, but it's the United Kingdom that decide. But in reality, it's England that decides because Parliament is in England. So it's not an English Parliament. Westminster is not an English Parliament, it's a UK Parliament, but it makes laws for England and for the rest of the United Kingdom. But England, in a sense, can borrow as much as it wants because it's not devolved. But it borrows for it's a very that's a very interesting question. What is England? Because it's not an independent country. And it's not devolved, but borrowing is not, most representation is from England. It's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to. It's a bit of a fix. You need to ask a constitutional scholar in England who could explain it better, because it is, this is something that people have been pushing for, that England should become independent. England should be, or power should be devolved to an English parliament. So you'd have an English parliament, Scottish parliament, Northern Ireland Assembly, Welsh Assembly. You know, they would have their own assemblies or parliaments, and English laws would be written for English people. Scottish laws would be for Scottish people, and whatever. But that's not how it works, because Parliament is in the UK. Parliament is in England, and there isn't real It's not, you know, in a sense, wouldn't it make more sense for Scotland and Northern Ireland and Wales all to have the same number of MPs as England does? Then you would have true representation. Then they would all be on an equal footing, but that's not the case. And the government in England decide whether Scottish law, as we saw recently, goes to royal assent. Scotland doesn't. But thanks for that recommendation of this video. It demonstrates this is what's coming down the road if people in Britain don't get rid of the Tories. If they don't kick them out, this is going to be what you're going to see in a few years' time. English votes for English laws, where only English MPs vote on English laws only. Okay, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for the super chats. Greatly appreciated. Thanks to everyone for smashing the like button, and thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. A little bit shorter than usual, but there was another story I wanted to cover on the SNP, but it doesn't seem to be working. But I just wanted to talk about some of the candidates to replace Nicola Sturgeon, and some of them are okay, some of them are very much not okay, and I think it's going to be very difficult for the SNP to replace Nicola Sturgeon, to come up with somebody as good as her. I don't think they can. You know, Sturgeon was somebody who was able to unite the party behind independence. It's going to be a bit of a struggle for whoever replaces her. You know, maybe she should just say, sorry, I've changed my mind, I'm going to come back. I think the SNP would definitely prefer that and the independence movement. But I think Sturgeon, you know, 15 years she's been in politics. She said, no, I've had enough. They all suck, mate. So before we finish, we have our one for the road, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Matt Green, once again, as always, wonderful. Is it working? David McGuinness, England no longer exists. It's called Great Britain. Good point.
At a speech in Manchester today, Keir Starmer unveiled his 5 missions for a better Britain. Our Pledges, Missions and Ambitions correspondent, Jonathan Goodenough, has more. Yes, that's right. The leader of the Labour Party made it very clear that he has a number of missions for this country, and that number is 5. So what are they? Well, they start with Mission 1, as you might expect, then go on to Mission 2, then jump forward to Mission 5 before jumping back to Mission 4, and then finishing on Mission 3. Although that might be because just before I came on air, I did drop my notes. Are these missions difficult? Unlike Tom Cruise, I'm sure that Sir Keir will hope that these aren't missions impossible. Although Tom's up to about 7 now, isn't he? So can you just run through them for us? Okay, yeah, let me just check my notes. Right, something about growth and the NHS, generally pro, crime, generally against, halve inflation, stop the small boats. Oh, no, sorry, I think I've got those mixed up with Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges, right? Okay, just replace small boats with clean energy and you get the gist. In fact, actually, was that one of Sunak's policies? Why do politicians these days seem obsessed with setting out their plans in 5s? From Tony Blair's 5 pledges to now, it's always 5. Well, according to my sources, it's because 5 is the smallest number that sounds like a lot, but the largest number that feels achievable. What does that mean? Well, for example, if I say I'm going to drink 5 pints over an evening, that sounds reasonable. 4, I feel like a lightweight. 6, an alcoholic. And that's the same for politics. Yes, and it also means you can count the pledges off with one hand, which is an effective rhetorical device and a useful aid memoir. But this can backfire if you can't recall them all in public. Yes, that's right. You might remember Rick Perry's unfortunate oops moment when he couldn't remember one of his pledges in a live Republican primary debate. And that was one of only 3, wasn't it? Yes, American attention attention spans are shorter. So how much will Starmer's 5 missions impact on the election? Well, he's already 20 points ahead in the polls, so unless one of his missions was to hand every asylum seeker a golden key that gives them access to the single market and all women's bathrooms, then probably not much. And is that one of his missions? According to the Daily Telegraph, yes. Thank you, Jonathan. Next up, as supermarkets start to ration salad vegetables, we'll speak to the Secretary of State for DEFRA, who'll give us some great tips on new recipes, such as the 2023 BLT, made from a blue passport, leaves and turnip.
Blue passport, leaves and turnip. Once again, thanks so much, David. David says England no longer exists. It's called Great Britain. So yes, there's a very valid point. So it's Great Britain, Scotland, and Wales. We also have number 3. Thanks so much for that super chat. Baby food stuff. Maybe in short supply now. Oh my God! It's, as you know, as Keir Starmer said, it's limping from crisis to crisis, and that seems to be the case. Yes. So it's tomatoes today, baby food tomorrow. What will be the thing after that? And Ruth, wonderful response. Thanks, Max. Thank you so much for that super chat, Ruth. Kevin says, Max as new SNP leader. I'll do my best. So, guys, I want to say have a great weekend. Do check us out on the Sunday roast. We have a Sunday roast on Sunday. Hope you have a great evening, great weekend. And if I don't see you on Sunday, I'll see you next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. For those of you who are patrons, I'll see you on Discord slightly later than usual, but I'll probably see you after the show. Have a great weekend, guys. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Good night.